Multiplayer game where your teammates are so focused on their individual fight that you guys forget to talk, and before you know it, your base is being overrun. Let me give you a great real-world example. So in 2023, just a few years ago, CISA is conducting a red team assessment as part of their Silent Shield operations. Now, for those of you that maybe aren't familiar with this, a red team assessment is sort of a non-destructive simulated cyber attack. The whole purpose is sort of assess your security posture. And in this test, they are conducting a nation-state attack simulated on another federal agency. So they start by finding an unpatched web server. They use an exploit to make their way into the Solaris enclave and eventually into the Windows domain of this organization. Now here's a really interesting part of this story. The IT team, which is responsible for the Solaris enclave in this organization, does notice some unusual behavior. They start investigating. But the SOC, which is responsible for the Windows domain in this organization, is unaware. Days turn into weeks. By the time CISA reveals itself, they've been there for months. And even in the debrief, when CISA is making a set of recommendations on what needs to change, they still ran into bureaucratic headwinds. Simple things like, how do we share logs? Now, in my mind, this isn't just a process failure. I think it's an example of the solo quest myth in action. Because our threats today are going to behave exactly the same way. And I think this is the real opportunity for us in AI. It's not about creating some autonomous super agent that can do anything and everything. It's about helping us as teams move a bit faster, freeing up our time so that we can coordinate across our organizations, because the real breakthrough is in that coordination. Gartner's most recent research supports this observation. They find that cybersecurity today requires a coordinated, cross-functional collaboration between humans and machines. They are seeing that organizations adopting AI today are mostly using it for tactical task automation to speed up their organizations and free some time. By 2027, they predict that 90% of all the cybersecurity implementations will be about augmenting and not replacing human teams. Now, this research is really interesting if you consider the rise of autonomous AI in identity security. And by autonomous, I mean these solo agents that sort of working by themselves, even if they're interacting with the human. This reminds me of a common gaming experience of this NPC character that is helpful, but not particularly useful. Because on paper, these things look amazing. They're tireless. They have perfect memory recall. They can operate at superhuman speed. But in practice, not always. The dilemma is that AI is really, really good at reacting to things it's been trained on. But when it encounters something that is unfamiliar or a bit ambiguous, it falls down. Let me give you a great example. The year's 2018. OpenAI is working on an effort called OpenAI 5. It's about the same time they're working on GPT-1. Now remember, ChatGPT will not come to market until 2022. So in 2018, they've decided to train a set of bots to play this ridiculously difficult game called Dota 2. Now I've never played this game, but in my research for this talk, I found that it was either the hardest or one of the hardest games ever made. Maybe not surprising that OpenAI went for it. So they took what was hundreds of years of gameplay and compressed it down into 10 months of training, continuous training for these bots. And they were quite happy with the progress they'd reached. So they challenged the world champion team, ironically a team by the name of Pain, to a fight. And the OpenAI team lost. The team started well, actually really, really well, but the Pain team adapted their strategies in the face of a determined enemy, and the AI wasn't ready for that. Now, you may say, John, that was 2018. We've come so far in terms of technology innovation. But if I look at today, Claude, one of the most powerful large language models made by Anthropic, still has not beaten Pokemon. That game requires a lot of improvisation to win. Now, the OpenAI team, they didn't give up, sort of nursed their wounds and threw a ton of resources into training a new set of bots. And in 2019, they challenged the then reigning champion, a team by the name of the OG, and this time they won. But here's my key takeaway. I would argue there are probably a handful of companies in the world that have the resources to train a set of bots to that level of specialization. And unfortunately, these are not the tools we are using in identity security. This is why I don't think a fully autonomous answer is what is our next step. And the research warns us about this. They call it agent washing. It's where the marketing of an organization wildly oversells the capabilities. Today, at least, I would argue that our AI capabilities are most focused on administrative time tasks. More importantly, I don't think we should lose the opportunity here, which is about getting us to work better together, which is what I call multiplayer. It mirrors what we already see in the most successful sports and esports teams. Those winning teams are composed of diverse roles, they're in constant communication, and they're able to adapt to a changing game. It's all about teamwork. And not only should the AI agents help us in our human-to-human collaboration, but we're in a moment now where emerging architectures are allowing for multi-agent designs and agent-to-agent handoff to set a new level of teamwork. But that's still the operative word, teamwork. And I think the real breakthrough in the market and innovation is happening right now before us. It's this emerging world of agentic AI. Now, if you're very close to this space, then you already know that AI agents and agentic AI are two very different things. And if you're not close to this space, you're saying, why the hell did you call it that? Very broadly, AI agents are agents that operate by themselves, even if there's a human involved. Think of it like a chatbot. Agentic AI, on the other hand, is the idea that agents can operate with other agents. They have a set of skills for doing discovery, communicating, sharing memory, and most importantly, collaborating on the complex tasks necessary to solve a problem. It's a real leap forward in where the market's going. And this critical breakthrough is absolutely necessary for us because despite all the innovation we've had in this space, there's still a lot of limitations in our AI agent technology. There's a very popular open source community called Hugging Face. I don't make up the names, Hugging Face. They are connecting model developers and data owners in the open to try to solve real world business problems. They have an agent leaderboard that evaluates agents' ability to solve complex tasks by seeing how well they're able to select the right tools to solve the problem. It's called the Tool Selection Quality Metric. And what do we find? Well, we find that for well-structured problems, these agents are fantastic. But when I have a complex task that requires a little bit of creative thinking, they fall down, and those limitations show up. Agentic AI approaches this problem in a very different perspective. It assumes that the agents know that they're not going to know everything, but they're also not alone. So they're going to be able to reach out, discover, find other agents to work with, collaborate with their human counterparts, but collectively work on a complex task solution. It's a fundamental change in where the market's going. The Gartner research on these implementations, what they call collaborative AI, show that teams composed of human and AI elements operating together outperform only human teams and fully autonomous AI teams. So I think the argument here is it's not just about agent efficiency. It's really about driving some resiliency into our organizations and how do we use these agentic teams to drive our ability to adapt. We're going to move from these simple human-AI pairings to a world where we've got a team of humans and agentic specialized agents working together. And if we ride this innovation curve just a little bit further, we're going beyond human and AI collaboration and even agent-to-agent collaboration in a localized sort of mode to this world where agents can interoperate with other agents from different platforms, different vendors, different cloud providers. This is sort of like the interoperability we achieved when APIs came to market, and we finally had a way to connect systems that didn't require a custom developed connector and a point-to-point solution. This agentic mode and these sort of innovation capabilities that are emerging are changing the way we're going to think about solving and solutioning of systems. Because until recently, most of the agentic AI work has been limited to vendor ecosystems. But we've had two very important open standards emerge. One is called Model Context Protocol, and you can think about this as a way for data owners to expose the data to agents they might want to use. Now, my company, Radiant Logic, is a data platform for identity, so I am keenly following this particular standard. The second is called Agent to Agent, and that does exactly what it sounds like. It allows agents to discover other agents, to share capabilities, to talk about shared memory. An agent may have experienced something, and it wants to play back that experience to a new agent. And most importantly, it allows them to do delegation, so they can solve complex tasks. So if you think about what this might mean for identity security, and I can see a world where you may have a ITDR agentic agent who's responding to a threat, and in that process determines that we can really use a control to limit this type of vulnerability from happening again, and may delegate that task to a compliance agent, which then enacts that control. So it's really a game changer when I think about how we develop systems of the future and what those systems might look like for us. And this isn't just theory. There are over 50 industry leaders that are backing these standards from all types of domains. So yes, we have the Anthropics and the OpenAIs and the Googles and the Microsofts of the world. To some degree, you might expect that. But we also have the Salesforces and the SAPs. You've got consultancies that are backing this. You've got people, Workday, HR mastering systems. I think this is one of those innovation moments where we're taking what was an early innovation, AI, and now finding our footing about how this actually may be deployed for our security needs. And this may change the way we actually develop systems. I can see where our vendor systems are no longer us developing a logic for solving a particular task, as much as specializing an agent that is trained in a certain domain. And our user experience, maybe we move away from dashboards and alerts, and I'm now collaborating with a team of human and AI agents in sort of real-world response. Gartner's most recent research in large language models sees the same shift. They are seeing a movement away from bigger and bigger large language models to what's called small language models. These are models that are trained on a specific domain, and they work with a set of specialized AI agents that know how to collaborate. MCP and 808, those open standards, they're the things that unlock this orchestration and the ability for them to interoperate. But you can think about the architecture of the future is more about components and the combination of specialized teams. Now, we're going to have to come up with new architectural designs, we're going to have to come up with new thinking about user experience standards, and for sure, we're going to have to think about guardrails. Your teams will have to develop new skills about how to use these tools, but I think the payoff is pretty transformative. If I were to look at, say, the future SOC and how I might think about this technology and these capabilities applied, I'd first sort of reflect that today's SOC is it's a rough place to be. You're overwhelmed by data and alerts. And every SOC leader that I talk to says two things: I don't need another alerting tool, and I have to make sure that humans are in the loop for all key decisions. But what if our SOC of the future was sort of looked at like drafting a team? Like, what if I took my fastest players, these specialized AI agents, and I put them on the front? They're really good at watching all these alerts, sort of finding the signal from the noise, correlating that data. And what if I took my most experienced players, my humans, and I put them in a place where they can really excel, doing the deep investigation, thinking about the creative problem solving? In my mind, the future SOC isn't fully automated and definitely not fully autonomous, I might argue that it's fully orchestrated. The team's going to look a little different. Specialized agents and humans working together. Humans are absolutely still in the loop. But I might argue this is what a true multiplayer system in the future is going to look like. How about we make this real in our own organizations? So the first thing I would ask you if you're playing a game is, what's your strategy to defend your base? And you may say, well, I need to take a look at that. What is the terrain that I'm trying to defend? And you might argue that, well, you all have the same mission, which is sort of reducing your attack surface. But every one of you is composed of a different combination of accounts, human and non-human identities, applications, entitlements, permissions. You may have legacy applications, you may have custom applications, hybrid environments, maybe geographically deployed. And it's going to look a little different for each one of your organizations. That's why I think the way you develop a defense plan, like how you defend your base, is going to be slightly different for each one of you. That's why you don't copy the playbook. And just like a game, you would say, I have to determine what my vulnerabilities are and my risks, and then I'll select the team that I'm going to use to defend that, and then the strategy to make that work. And unfortunately, your terrain is not very friendly. Some days you must think your own company is out to kill you. 2024 study from Carnegie Mellon found that for most enterprises, they have 50 to 70% more privileged accounts than they actually need. I sometimes equate this to like having teenagers in the house just when you clean something up. And you've all got your organizational teenagers you're trying to deal with, constantly producing some chaos behind the scenes. Things like over-permissive accounts, leaving orphan credentials hanging around, contributing to your identity sprawl that you're constantly trying to manage. All of this creates a weakened identity security posture. It's like leaving hidden enemy spawn points on your game board. Like, I just got this cleaned up, and where did these guys come from? That's why I would argue that defending and securing your identity landscape cannot be a solo mission. The threat is evolving too quickly, your terrain is too dynamic, you need all of the teams you have deployed, but they've got to be able to interoperate. No single tool, and definitely no single super soldier is going to solve that for you. But our teams are going to change. It's not just a human team with a set of technologies they're using, even if some of that technology is an autonomous agent. It's really about these specialized agents that are trained in certain areas that can coordinate and collaborate amongst themselves and you as well. All right, let's have a little fun. Let's build out our own agentic AI squad. So what do we know? Well, firstly, we know we're going to need a team. No single superhero is going to solve it for us. We know that our team has to be configured with skills that are specialized for the terrain I'm trying to defend. Each of your bases is different. That team may look a little bit different. And therefore, we know we're going to need a balanced team of specialized skills to make that successful. So in gaming, you might refer to this as the loadout. The loadout for you non-gamers is where you go in and you select the characters that you want to play with. And each of these characters has got a different combination of abilities. How much damage they can take, how much damage they can give, how fast do they move, what kind of special skills do they have. And there's always a little bit of trade-offs as you make these selections, because with those skills comes some vulnerabilities. Perhaps they're a little bit weak, or perhaps they're a little bit slow. Not surprisingly, I think this is exactly how we plan our defenses today as we select our tools and the team to use them. So here's how I might select my agentic AI squad. My first choice is ISPM, the tank. This is my frontline defender. This agent specializes in posture management, scanning for misconfigurations, looking for overprivileged accounts, orphan credentials. These digital tanks sort of patch these vulnerabilities in my environment, enforce the idea of least privilege or whatever other controls I may need for my organization. Their strength is in fortifying the perimeter. That's why we call it reducing the attack surface. My second player, ITDR, my damage dealer. In gaming lingo, we call this DPS, or damage per second. These are your offensive specialists. These agentic ITR agents hunt for real-time threats. They're looking for suspicious activity, privilege escalations, and they respond to incidents as they unfold. And just like a DPS team and an elite gaming group, these things are built for speed. You could think about DPS as the DR in ITDR. They are detect and respond. They identify the threat and they neutralize it. My next player would probably be the scout. Arguably maybe the unsung hero of my team. The scout is my eyes and ears, constantly on the move, mapping out my entire landscape, and more importantly, watching for when things might change. This is the specialization of observability. It's about the continuous real-time monitoring of my threat landscape, my environment, looking for not only new things that may have come on, but things that I have already secured or remediated that might have changed. I might argue that this is a foundational piece to my resilience strategy, because I can't protect what I can't see. And I think you see where this is going. We're sort of in this full multiplayer mode. I built out a team of specialized defense for my particular environment. I've studied my terrain, my base. I've selected my characters based on the skills that I need, just like you would select a team in your favorite game. And in our space, there's going to be no single role, no single team that's going to solve that. The landscape is too complex. Threats are evolving too quickly. That's why you build for specialization. So I put all of this into motion, how I might field my team, starts with my scout. You can imagine this as sort of lifting the fog of war in my particular terrain, mapping out my accounts, building that prioritized list of things I have to deal with, ordered maybe by risk, informing my ISPM tank of what he or she is going to have to solve for. And then my ISPM agent moving through those remediations, enforcing that concept of least privilege. The scout and the tank reduce the attack surface, which allows my offensive player, my ITDR agent, to focus. You see how this comes together, right? And this isn't just a game of bots. I think the key takeaway here is we have humans absolutely in the loop, adjusting strategy, looking for that emerging unconventional threat that we might face. But it's not a solo quest. It's a coordinated multiplayer action. But I might argue the teams have just changed a little bit. So as I wrap up, I hope my message is very clear. Solo play isn't enough. The threats we face are too complex. They're too fast moving. Our terrain is ever changing. So no one team, no one super agent is going to be able to solve that. True resilience is going to come from something we've known for a long time. It's about teamwork. But in this case, it's orchestrated teamwork, and our teams are kind of changing. It's going to require some new thinking about how we build systems, but also about how we staff our teams and the skills that those teams need. This multiplayer world isn't about replacing human expertise. It's more about amplifying it. Because we know the best defenses come from that teamwork. So my call to action, let's stop grinding alone. Let's embrace this multiplayer world. Let's team up. And let's win this together. Thank you guys very much.